I don't want to be relied on, so we're cutting ties.
We're not going to have anything to do with you from now on.
When Michael and Ashley found out my pension was only $900 a month, they cut me off. They seemed to have completely forgotten how much they had relied on and burdened George and me. But I had already made up my mind. Are you really sure about this?
What?
Ashley faltered for a moment at my serious expression, but then she burst into laughter, dismissing my words. You might as well laugh while you can regret. We'll make sure you never laugh again. And that day came sooner than I thought. 2 months after they cut ties, Ashley faced a turn of events she never saw coming. My name is Emily, and I just turned 65 this year. I recently retired from the company where I worked for many years. I plan to take it easy from now on, but since I was working up until recently, I sometimes catch myself almost heading to work. Habits are hard to break. I try to keep my mind and body sharp every day, so I won't be a burden to my kids, but I still worry sometimes. My husband, George, passed away some time ago, but I have 2 sons. My older son, Michael, is 39 and married to Ashley, who is 5 years older than him. My younger son, David, is 35 and married to his former classmate, Rachel. They both have families of their own, and since they have their own responsibilities, I always remind myself not to rely on them. One day, however, I missed a step on my stairs at home and ended up needing help from Ashley and Rachel. I fractured my right leg and had to be hospitalized. At the hospital, they required a guarantor for the admission process. Reluctantly, I sent a message to Michael and David asking for help. I figured David or Rachel would probably come. Michael and Ashley are so cold-hearted that I didn't expect them to show up. They always show up when they need a favor, but during the 2 years when George was ill, they didn't even visit. During that time, it was David and Rachel who took care of everything for me. To my surprise, though, the person who opened the hospital room door was Ashley, but what she said was exactly what I expected.
Don't misunderstand. I only came to say no in person. There's no way I'm going to be your guarantor. Don't be a burden.
Ashley rattled off her words without a single word of concern for my condition. Her flashy outfit, heavy makeup, and overwhelming perfume didn't belong in a hospital. And as always, she refused to listen to anyone else. The guarantor thing is just a formality. I've already put down the deposit. I should be out of here in about a week, so it won't be a bother.
Excuse me, Emily, but you've retired and live on a pension now, right? How much do you get each month?
About $900.
Really? That's less than my allowance.
What? I almost shouted back in shock. Even though Ashley's been a stay-at-home wife since getting married, is Michael really giving her that much spending money? Just then, Rachel rushed in out of breath.
Sorry I'm late. I just finished the guarantor paperwork downstairs.
Hearing Rachel's words, Ashley's scowl immediately turned into a smile.
Oh, good. I was worried for nothing. I'll leave everything else to you, Rachel.
With that, Ashley walked off quickly.
She hasn't changed a bit.
Rachel chuckled awkwardly at Ashley's attitude. After thanking Rachel, I asked her something that had been on my mind. Sorry to ask, Rachel, but how much is your monthly allowance?
About $100.
That seems a bit low, especially since you're working too.
Right now, saving for our home is the priority. Besides, you've always been so kind to help me out with little things, and it really makes a difference.
When George fell ill, Rachel would bring my grandkids to visit him at the hospital almost every day. She also helped take care of me when I was exhausted. After George passed away, she'd often drop off extra meals she'd made. It's only natural that I want to give her a little spending money. Of course, I've never given anything to Ashley.
I manage just fine with my allowance, but Ashley is part of a group of wealthy moms. It must be tough keeping up with them.
Rachel's older son is in elementary school, attending the same school as Ashley's child. The moms Ashley hangs out with are from well-off families and often host fancy lunch gatherings. Michael seems completely under Ashley's thumb, and I wonder how they manage financially since he doesn't even earn a high salary. Even so, I have no intention of offering help or worrying about Michael and Ashley. Shortly after getting married, Michael and Ashley moved into a luxury rental apartment. George signed as their guarantor, but he soon regretted it. A few months later, Michael and Ashley tearfully said they couldn't pay the rent.
Dad, please help us.
That's what Michael said when he asked George for help. The apartment near the station was not cheap, and George and I had opposed it from the beginning. But Ashley, wanting to show off, insisted on renting it anyway. As expected, the rent began straining their finances, and they were already several months behind. I still remember what Ashley said back then.
Well, we can't pay, but George, you're the guarantor, right?
George winced at her tone, but because Michael asked, he covered the rent, making Michael sign an IOU. We urged them to move to a place they could actually afford, but they stayed until the lease renewal, with George paying their rent for nearly 2 years. Even at the renewal, they shamelessly asked George to continue as their guarantor. Michael seemed a bit hesitant this time, but Ashley wasn't.
Moving costs money, and staying here is a better deal, so please help us.
Then ask your own parents to be your guarantors.
My parents hate being guarantors or dealing with debt.
When I said that, she glared at me angrily. We don't like being guarantors or dealing with debt either. When I replied firmly, Ashley tried to appeal to George, but he wouldn't even look at her. Eventually, they moved to another apartment. It was a luxury apartment, but because of its troubled history, the rent was cheap. No one had rented it for a long time, and no guarantor was required. I can't understand how they could live in a place like that just for appearances. Their rent burden must have decreased, but they still haven't repaid a single dollar of the rent George covered. So when Ashley said earlier, "There's no way I'll be your guarantor. Don't be a burden," I couldn't believe my ears. But after all, she's the kind of person who lets rent pile up, refuses to work, and always shows up wearing new clothes and designer brands. There was a reason I contacted Michael and David this time. It was something I'd been considering for a while, and now my mind was made up. A week later, on the day of my discharge, I was waiting at the hospital for David and his family. To my surprise, Michael and Ashley also showed up. Apparently, they had something important to discuss with me, and said it would only take a minute. Just then, David arrived with his wife, Rachel, and their sons, Bill and Ryan, who burst through the door excitedly.
Grandma, let's go get steak now.
Today, we plan to celebrate my discharge with a steak dinner with David and his family. Bill and Ryan were so hungry they couldn't wait and were bouncing with excitement.
Oh, steak? Then we'll join you too.
How shameless. Weren't they supposed to say their piece and leave? I knew if I refused, they'd insist and cause a scene. Plus, I didn't want to act mean in front of Bill and Ryan, so I reluctantly agreed. At the steakhouse, Michael and Ashley ordered the most expensive dishes, which was as exasperating as ever. Sensing that Michael and Ashley weren't there with good intentions, Rachel took Bill and Ryan to a nearby park after they finished eating. Once Michael and Ashley had filled their stomachs, they happily began talking.
Emily, are you really planning to live on $900 a month from your pension?
I knew exactly where Ashley was going with this. If she cared about my finances, she wouldn't have eaten so much steak. So with a hint of sarcasm, I replied, "Yes, I've always lived frugally. Today was a rare treat, but $900 a month is enough for me to get by." But sarcasm didn't work on someone like Ashley, and she declared,
We talked it over and decided we don't want to be relied on, so we're cutting ties.
We won't have anything to do with you from now on.
They grinned as they said it, having made up their minds after learning about my $900 a month pension. They also didn't want to be burdened with my rehab, saying it wasn't just about the money, but also the time it would take.
But don't misunderstand. It's not that we don't want to help you or take care of you, Emily. We have kids, so it's just physically impossible for us.
Their hollow excuse was exactly what I expected. I looked Ashley straight in the eye and asked, "Are you really sure about this?"
What?
Ashley hesitated for a moment, maybe because my expression was so serious, but she quickly burst out laughing and shot back,
Are you sure about this? That's our line. I can't believe I'm hearing this from the person being cut off.
"Michael, are you okay with this too?"
If Ashley says so, then yeah, I'm fine with it.
Michael had always been easily swayed, but he used to have at least some concern for his family. Now he was completely under Ashley's thumb. "All right, David, I want you to be my witness." Ashley laughed even louder when she saw David nod.
David, we'd love it if you'd be our witness too. Since you guys live so cheaply, I'm sure you and Emily get along great.
Then David turned to them and said,
I'm cutting ties with you two as well.
Ashley looked surprised for a moment, but quickly snapped back at him.
Well, then make sure you never come to us for help. We'll leave all of Emily's support and care to you.
You'll regret this.
David glared at Michael and Ashley, but she sneered to the end.
No way. That'll never happen. Too bad for you, drawing the short straw as the second son. Oh wait, weren't you always broke anyway?
Michael didn't seem fazed at all by our decision to cut ties, as long as he had Ashley by his side. And with that, David and I severed ties with Michael and Ashley. 2 months after cutting ties, I had unexpected visitors early on a Sunday morning. It was Michael and Ashley. Ashley ignored the fact that I was leaning on my cane when I answered the door and loudly declared,
Buy us a new car too.
What are you talking about?
We know you bought David a luxury car.
As Ashley spoke, she pointed to the newly delivered car parked in the driveway. Michael didn't seem to care about the car at all and stayed silent. Keeping Ashley happy was clearly his top priority. Yes, I bought it with my own money. Why does that mean I have to buy you a car?
Don't play dumb. You've been hiding George's inheritance.
I had no idea what she was talking about. When George passed away, there was only $500 left in his account. That was because George, always eager to look like a good father in front of them, had kept giving them financial support. In the end, Ashley even managed to take that last $500. So you're saying that because I bought the car with George's hidden inheritance, you're entitled to it too?
Exactly.
Sorry to disappoint you, but you took the last of George's inheritance. I worked all my life, so of course I have savings. I told Ashley this, but she refused to accept it.
That car cost $50,000. There's no way you could afford it unless it came from an inheritance.
I couldn't help but laugh, which only made Ashley angrier.
Are you laughing to cover up the fact you got caught? You're the worst.
I was a top salesperson for years. I also held a management position. I have enough savings to buy that car.
What?
I bought the car so David and Rachel could drive me to my appointments and rehab sessions. You cut ties with me because you didn't want to help me, so it's none of your business. Ashley clenched her fists in frustration, unable to respond.
Then buy Ashley a new car too. She deserves it.
Michael, apparently forgetting we were estranged, begged for a car for Ashley. Just then, David and Rachel returned from shopping.
We're back.
As they walked into the house, Ashley followed them right in without permission.
Wait, David and Rachel, you're living here?
Yes, since I still need a cane to get around, they're staying with me. Is that clear enough for you? I wish they'd just leave already. The fresh bread David and Rachel bought is going to get cold. But Ashley started saying something ridiculous.
This is our house that we'll inherit one day. Stop acting like it's yours.
Even after cutting ties and leaving everything to David, she's saying this now? We were too stunned to respond. Who decided that you'd inherit this house?
Well, since Michael's the oldest, we thought it would automatically go to us once you pass away. Legally, that's how it works, even if we're estranged.
Talking about my death while I'm still alive is extremely rude. When I said that, Ashley looked uncomfortable and fell silent. You won't help me, you won't care for me, yet you're just waiting for me to die so you can take the house? How convenient for you.
That's not what we meant.
Ashley's voice grew weaker. That's exactly how it sounds to me. And for the record, I already gifted this house to David. It won't be yours.
But George promised us. He said we'd inherit this house one day. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
Michael quickly nodded, clearly under Ashley's pressure. That's a lie. I bought this house with my own earnings. It's in my name. George wouldn't have lied to take credit for it.
What?
Ashley had finally pushed me too far. When I got injured, I realized how unpredictable life is, and I decided I didn't want to leave you a single penny. Instead, I want to leave as much as possible to David and Rachel, who've always been there for me. I let out my true feelings. Ashley immediately changed her tone.
Emily, you're being deceived. Wake up. David and Rachel are just trying to score points to get your inheritance. Their kindness is nothing but fake charity. Can't you see that?
Fake kindness? That's fine by me. I'd rather have fake kindness than no kindness at all. Even if David and Rachel are pretending, they've helped me countless times. I want to give back for that. What have you ever done for me? Ashley had nothing to say. Of course she didn't. They've caused nothing but trouble and have never done anything for me, not even once. Of course, I know very well that what David and Rachel did wasn't fake charity. When I offered them the house as a gift, they refused. They even said a cheaper car would be fine, but I chose and bought the one I wanted. Both the house and the car came from the money I earned through hard work, and I have no intention of leaving anything to Michael and Ashley. David and Rachel only agreed on the condition that I live with them.
You shouldn't have said something as foolish as cutting ties. I told you, right? You'd regret it.
Ashley glared at David, then turned to me and said,
Fine. Then give us the value of the house in cash. Michael is your son too, so legally, he has a right to it.
I expected this. I went to the living room, pulled out a stack of papers from the drawer, and slammed them down in front of Ashley. They were a pile of IOUs George had made Michael sign, including the rent payments we'd covered and other financial help. You can say that when you've paid these off, the amount owed is far more than what you're asking for. Ashley hadn't expected me to bring out something like that, and her face immediately went pale. Even Michael was silent, staring at the pile of IOUs. Listen, I inherited George's estate. That means I have every right to collect this debt from you.
But I've just been so busy with everything.
I don't want to hear excuses. Did you think George's death erased these debts? Oh, but that's the kind of people you are. You took advantage of George's support, and the moment he was hospitalized, you abandoned him.
Mom, it's not like that. Ashley is just dedicated to the kids' education, and it keeps her busy.
Michael tried to defend Ashley's excuse, but I wasn't about to back down. You're busy, right? With those endless fancy lunch dates with your mom friends. The goal isn't about the kids. It's all about showing off and exchanging the latest designer brand info. Who has time for hospital visits or caregiving when there's no money in it? Michael, who had been defending Ashley this whole time, now looked confused by my words.
Fancy lunch dates?
That's not true. You're misunderstanding. I told you before, we have cheap lunch dates at restaurants.
Ashley stammered, panicking, but Rachel backed me up.
You were making fun of me for going to mom lunches. You said your lunches cost $50 per person.
Stop talking about things that don't matter.
I'm eating cheap lunches every day, and you're spending $50 on yours. What's going on?
That's not what it looks like.
Tension between Michael and Ashley was growing. Ashley turned back to me, trying to justify herself.
After George was hospitalized, he told us we didn't have to pay him back. He said we could have the money.
The anger I had been holding back surged to the surface. I wasn't going to hold back anymore. That's another lie. You two never even visited the hospital once. When exactly did George tell you that? You used him when he was alive, and now you're using him after he's gone.
But that was between Michael and George. It has nothing to do with me.
But Michael had been silent for a while now. He was likely stuck on the revelation about Ashley's lunch dates. As his mother, I knew Michael's personality well. He could never forgive a lie. When Michael asked George for help, he would often say,
It costs a lot to educate the kids. Ashley says networking with other moms is important for exchanging info. I just want to help her.
Michael probably believed Ashley when she told him that. The truth was, Ashley had been married before, and the child was from her previous marriage. Michael had fallen for Ashley because she was a single mom, and he wanted to support her and give their family happiness. I brought up the lunch gatherings deliberately, knowing Michael's nature and the history behind everything. That's how much I couldn't forgive Ashley. Ashley, do you remember the message you accidentally sent me the day George was hospitalized? Would you call that a slip-up?
What?
Michael leaned forward, suddenly interested. I showed Michael the message I had saved. His hands shook as he threw his phone to the floor. Ashley picked it up and looked at the screen. Her face turned even paler, and she began to tremble more than Michael.
Oh my God, that ATM is in the hospital. Useless.
That was the message Ashley had mistakenly sent. At that moment, I wasn't sure if I should confront Ashley immediately or tell Michael, so I consulted with David and Rachel.
For now, let's focus on Dad's health. But later, we'll settle this properly.
David had said that, and I agreed. And just like David, Rachel supported and cared for me. That's why my gratitude toward her is beyond words. George was prideful, but he had many good qualities that made him hard to dislike. Looking back, when we were dating, he won me over with constant gifts, and I only learned after we married that he had no savings. He never cheated, drank too much, or gambled, and though he was stuck as an assistant manager, he was diligent at work. In hindsight, he was just a little clumsy in his ways. After George passed away, while sorting through his belongings, I found that stack of IOUs with a letter addressed to me.
Sorry for all the hardships I've caused you. I spoiled Michael too much because he's just like me. If anything happens to me, make sure he pays off the debt and you use the money to enjoy your comfortable retirement.
The letter was dated just a few days before George collapsed. He must have known he wasn't well. I never showed this letter to anyone, and I don't intend to. David and Rachel share my resolve never to forgive Ashley. After seeing the message, I know Michael feels the same. George gave him more love and support than anyone else, which makes Ashley's betrayal all the more infuriating. My anger toward Ashley is immeasurable.
It's not true. That wasn't me. I don't know anything about this. It must be someone trying to frame me.
Ashley clung desperately to Michael's leg, but he kicked her away. It was hard to believe this was the same man who used to be so kind to her.
Please believe me.
If you want me to believe you, then pay off this debt right now. You told me the money was for the kids, so I asked Dad for help. I borrowed it, but you spent it all.
The power dynamic had completely flipped. Until now, Ashley had always been in control, and Michael had followed her lead. But that was over now.
I don't have any money.
Then sell your clothes and bags.
Please, no. Those are more important to me than life itself.
So your kids aren't more important than those things? I can't believe I fell for this.
Ashley shook her head wildly, unable to find the words. It was as if Michael no longer saw her at all. Michael grabbed the stack of IOUs and headed for the door.
Wait, Michael, please wait.
Ashley frantically ran after him, but Michael got in his car and drove away, leaving her behind. The next day, we took a day trip with Bill and Ryan to visit George's grave and tell him everything that had happened. After spending a joyful day, we returned home to find Ashley standing there.
Where were you? I've been waiting here all day.
She was shouting so loudly that we reluctantly let her in. I already knew why she was here.
Where's Michael? He hasn't come home since yesterday.
Ashley was clearly in a panic.
He even left the divorce papers, and all my designer bags and clothes are gone.
I figured as much. Michael's not coming back.
Michael's done with you.
What do you mean? What do you know?
Michael hadn't come here or contacted us since then. But I knew my son well. Michael has always liked strong-willed, demanding women. He believes that someone like that is honest and upfront, so he doesn't mind being pushed around. But if someone lies to him even once, it's over.
You lied to Michael. He kept begging Dad for help because you told him it was for the kids.
Do you really need expensive lunches and designer brands for the kids?
Well,
Ashley's defiance faded and her voice weakened. Michael won't speak to someone who lies to him. He can be completely loyal until that trust is broken. After that, he becomes cold and ruthless. Didn't you know that?
No matter how much you apologize, it won't reach him.
Plenty of people have tried to manipulate him before. I remember a girl who even pulled a knife, but Michael didn't flinch. He just said, "Go ahead." No tears, no threats, nothing worked on him.
If only you had understood Michael a little better.
Hearing David's words, Ashley turned to me in a fury.
you knew that, and you still brought up the lunch dates on purpose. You knew he'd get angry, and you still said it.
Yes, I did.
Yes. Are you serious? How can you enjoy destroying your son's marriage?
I don't care what happens to Michael. That's his own fault for choosing someone like you. He's paying a steep price for it, but that's just how it is. But you, I will never forgive you. Ashley seemed overwhelmed by my conviction and took a step back. Ever since I saw that message you mistakenly sent, I've never forgiven you. You always acted like you were in control, but on the day I was discharged, I had planned to cut ties with you myself.
What?
I wanted you to find out that the house was gifted to David and Rachel after I passed away. With the IOUs, you wouldn't have a claim to anything, but you made me even angrier. I might have let it slide if you'd only complained about the car, but you took advantage of George's absence to lie and try to use him again. That's nothing short of an insult to his memory. I continued speaking. Michael left because he thought the same thing. Even if he comes here, he will never go back to you.
Please. I don't want to lose Michael. I'll apologize as much as it takes. Can't you help me, Emily? Please.
So that's how it is. Rachel was right. The day of the guarantor incident, David came over, and the three of us had a conversation.
Mom, maybe it's time to end this.
Yes, I plan to cut ties once I'm discharged.
Is that enough for you?
That's when I told them about the plan to gift the house and the existence of the IOUs. I'll probably end up watching Ashley's regret from heaven, but that's good enough for me. George would understand, but if she does anything to make me angrier, I'll make sure she's completely crushed.
I can't forgive that message. Dad deserves better than that.
Me too. George loved Bill and Ryan so much. I could never forgive Ashley.
George never spent money on himself. Even though he helped Michael, he also supported David and Rachel. He often cared for Bill and Ryan when their parents were busy with work. So I thought about how best to get back at Ashley. I figured if she lost the thing most important to her, she'd suffer. And that wasn't her kids. It was her designer items and connections with her wealthy mom friends. But Rachel said,
Ashley's most important thing is probably Michael.
David and I were shocked. For over a decade, Michael had worn the same clothes, and it wasn't uncommon to see holes in his socks. It was clear she hadn't spent money on him at all. It was hard to believe that someone she treated so poorly was the most important person to her.
Michael is tall, pretty good looking, and well liked by the moms. He works at a major company and is 5 years younger. She's always bragging about him.
He married her even though she already had a child and did everything she asked. To that show-off woman, he's probably her greatest source of pride.
You can buy new designer bags, but Ashley will never find another catch like Michael.
If exposing Ashley's true colors would solve everything, it was a simple matter. I hadn't intended to do so, but when she pushed me too far and I brought up the lunch dates, things turned out exactly as I expected. Now Ashley was in tears, desperate not to lose Michael. If that's how you feel, you should have treated Michael better and stopped lying to him. And you should have been more grateful to George. This is your own fault.
This is all because of you, Emily. If you hadn't told Michael about the lunches, none of this would have happened.
I'm glad Michael finally woke up. This was bound to happen sooner or later. You're a liar, after all. Ashley burst into even louder sobs at my words.
We all refuse to forgive you. Don't ever show your face here again. Now, get out.
David's angry shout finally got Ashley to leave. Afterward, we told George everything. Ashley never came back to our house again. It wasn't physically possible for her to do so. The night before that day, Ashley's parents had come to our house to apologize. Michael had returned home, taken all of Ashley's designer items, sold them, and gone to Ashley's parents to explain everything. Her parents brought the amount owed, combined with what they had received from Michael's sales, and apologized to us. It turned out Ashley's claim that her parents hated being guarantors or dealing with debt was because she'd caused them endless trouble during her first marriage. Her parents were strict, and it was a mystery how she turned out the way she did. With nowhere to go and no money, Ashley had to move back in with her parents, who made her help with the family business under their watchful eye. Until she repaid the debt, she wouldn't be free. Her parents would have disowned her, but they made the difficult decision to help her for the sake of their grandchild. Ashley, desperate not to lose Michael, still hadn't filed the divorce papers even 6 months later. Michael called once and told us he wanted Ashley to sign the divorce papers because he was going to remarry. When she asked what kind of woman the new partner was, he simply said, someone who doesn't lie, which shattered her. Her parents eventually forced her to sign the papers, and the divorce was finalized. We learned this from her parents. After that, Ashley stopped attending lunch gatherings or meeting with her mom friends. Rachel told me that because Ashley used to brag so much about Michael, people now whispered and laughed at her during school events. Michael also contacted us once.
Actually, the remarriage story was a lie. For the first time in my life, I lied. I'm okay with being cut off and don't want any inheritance. I won't come home because I'm too ashamed, but please let me know if anything happens to Mom.
He realized he had no eye for women, and now he's happy living with a cat. Because cats don't lie. I think that's a good choice. Still, I worry since Michael tends to attract women. I finished my rehab sooner than expected, surprising even the doctors with my progress. The reason was simple. I felt guilty having Rachel continue to drive me around.
You bought a car for us, so please let us help.
But I couldn't keep relying on her. Now we're considering renovating the house. David and Rachel said they would cover the renovation cost because they didn't want me to bear it alone. I've also set aside enough funds to move into a care facility if needed because I don't want to burden Bill or Ryan. I told David and Rachel about this, but they're already against the idea, and I appreciate their care. George's letter said he wanted me to live in luxury with the repaid money. But I've never been interested in luxury. A modest life suits me just fine. Having kind David and Rachel and Bill and Ryan in my life is the greatest luxury I could ask for. I know I can keep living happily on $900 a month.